Hi there, this is Jim the Keys bartender coming to you live from Key Largo. As live as I'm going to be for a while, I guess. Um, it's episode 305, and the keys are packed. Are packed. Not to the brim, but they're packed. I realize you don't need any additional. Well, you do know about Florida, I'm sure. We're the epicenter of new cases in the world. So, um, per capita, there's other places where they have a lots, but Florida seems to be doing a yeoman service of providing new infected people there. But it is what it is, and the name of this episode is Normal. And I guess from you when you see the news, you'll just see people um, not doing anything particularly different down here, other than some people going about their lives the way they would have if there were no COVID 19. And as I discuss this with people that come into the bar, history will be the exact judge of what we did right, what we did wrong, and we, most parts of the world, the advanced nations such as Japan, Germany, Italy, they have new cases in the hundreds, and here in Florida itself, where we roll around anywhere from 7,000 to it's been up to 15,000 new cases, and with all the testing that we're doing, whether the new testing is bringing, their cases are cases. They're the newly infected, and there's probably tons more because that's just the people that are tested. Now, they're out there. All is suggesting that there's more people, and there's probably more people. There is a news item thought was interesting. In the same period last year, or normal year, there's about 900 deaths in by pneumonia, and this year it's 5,000 deaths prescribed as pneumonia. So take it as you will. It's either that we have a lot more pneumonia deaths, or COVID 19 illnesses are killing more people. I have my feeling is that there's going to be an uptick in heart attacks and strokes over the previous year. It could be brought up by hypertension or whatever, but it could be, some people say that every death is being written down as a COVID 19 death, or the other way is not every death is being recorded that could be COVID 19. So and as I said, we can argue about as much as you want or as little as you want, but history will be the judge in the end. The victors will write the history, and it's usually smarter people that write history. Smarter. Not always the case, because obviously the history was written about the Indians and Native Americans, and slavery has been tilted has been painted over or glossed over for generations in this country. But in the Florida Keys, so everything in South Florida and Miami-Dade County, the restaurants are closed except to delivery or takeout, and they're just, I guess they're just trying to address that, and it's trying to get people to wear masks. Just the other day, a couple days ago, Key West mandated that whenever you leave your house, when you're outside, that you wear a mask. And it may not be that, obviously, if you're jogging or walking by yourself, that you're going to infect somebody, but they don't want to have this thing where people aren't leaving your house without masks, perhaps, because we're still getting people that come into the restaurant that for some reason forget to have a mask if they're driving their car, why you don't have one or two masks. I myself, who always wears a mask, have forgot to bring a mask, so I've had to go back to my house and grab one if I wanted to go shopping. And you can see, if you want to, some people say that we're doing it here to um, make the current occupant of the White House look bad. I believe he's doing it a good job on his own, making himself look bad. But you know how I feel about it. It's no secret. And there are plenty of your MAGA programs out there to listen to if you want to hear something about that. But if you really want to look at statistics, look at the other countries where we used to belong in that group. I'd call them first world countries, Western economies, and well, I shouldn't even say Western because Japan and China. But if you look at the numbers of the infected coming out of those countries, they're drastically lower. 5% of what we have, and because they mandate strict social distancing and masks on their national level, and and obviously China, and whether you have strong feelings whenever you met China because it did begin there, but they were affected by it. So if it was something they did on purpose to affect themselves first, I mean, if I was gonna hurt somebody, I'm getting a phone call from Arizona.
Say answer or ignore.
Okay, ignore. So that is that. But as I was saying, if I was going to infect another country, I would just go to that country. But that's a kind of weird virus to put out there that would infect the whole world and disrupt your economy as well as everyone else's. So I did, but to get back to the episode name, I did say normal, didn't I? And some people, there are things that we have to deal with anyway, other than just COVID-19. There are other things. There's relationships we have to deal with. There's family. We have children. We have to feed. We have to, and, like most people, have to earn an income. Something you have to do. So, with those things, you have you're thinking of COVID-19 and stuff like that. What is normal? Well, I'll tell you, a normal thing I had to deal with over the last 2 weeks was power outages. Just 2 weeks ago, this is interesting. You don't hear this in many places in the world, but I imagine more tropical places. If you're not familiar how electrical systems work, delivery, you have one wire that brings the power in one direction to your house, and it creates a circuit. You hear circuit, and you have another one that takes it back out again, and it returns it back to the energy source. So every power station is a big circuit, and the power system grid is a circuit itself, as well as you have circuits in your house. And what happened down here, right at the bottom of my street, is an iguana, and iguanas have very long tails. Their tails are get to be about 3 to 4 times as long as their body on the older ones, and it must have created a circuit on the power line because it shut down a couple blocks down here when he made a connection. Yep, one fried iguana. Iguanas are edible. Some cultures they do eat it, and supposedly it tastes like chicken. I had a bite of iguana, yet it had a nondescript flavor to it, so it wasn't something I really would go for again. But it is something people eat. And that iguana, certainly going down there, must not, whatever you want to think of animal awareness, it must have been a quick end to that iguana. I wouldn't have loved to see it happen, but it would have been interesting to see what it looked like after it got in there. And then in second one, there's construction going around her house, and if you ever been on construction sites and things like that, whenever some of the power tools are on, sometimes you can get a bad wire or something like that, or you never know. It's just an overload of the system, and it shut it down. And we in the Florida Keys are fortunate to have a great electrical service. It's called the Co-op, and they're very diligent. Being in the tropics, we have very little interruptions. Rarely does it ever go more than an hour before we get a response and get it fixed. So your house doesn't even, it gets 5-6 degrees warmer before they're back on, and I do feel fortunate for that. So my hat's off to you people there. So back to the new normal. I have a benign growth on my parotid gland on my right side, and I've had it for 20 years, and I think I may have spoken on the previous episodes. And I had a scheduled operation on July 28th that I was going in for, and I was getting everything set up for it. And it's about a little less than 2 weeks ago. It would have been 2 weeks from yesterday. But yesterday I got a phone call from the hospital, and due to the increased numbers and ICUs getting filled, I guess they're converting rooms and they're running short on staff or whatever it is. But any procedures that aren't life-threatening, I imagine, I didn't go into detail. I didn't go and say why me, because I have a non-malignant mass on my parotid behind my right jaw. I did not go into great detail. I kind of understood that and didn't go, hey, why is that happening? I kind of was expecting it to happen once I saw the numbers spiking in South Florida. And, I may have forgot. The procedure was going to be taken care of on the mainland. And I was lining up the hospital there. They have the surgery scheduler that works for the surgeon. And they were setting that up for me. It was supposed to be early in the morning, and they didn't. Now, if I want to keep it at the same hospital, I got to wait about 4.5 months. 3.5 months. November, they said. So I'm not going to assume it before Thanksgiving. So about 3.5 months from now. And I didn't want to, and I asked, is there another opportunity? They said they can schedule it at an ambulatory center. I guess that's an outpatient center, which usually I should have, I would have liked to have done anyway in the first place. If it's only a 2-hour procedure, I would rather just do it there. But I guess they like to have it at the hospital for whatever reason. But that's an inconvenience. And yesterday kind of threw me. I was supposed to do a show, and I didn't feel like doing the show because that was on my mind. I wanted to get it taken care of. And I just have this feeling about people cutting up the side of my head and taking out a tumor. I just wanted it taken care of, and that's me just being self-centered. I realize there's people dealing with a lot worse. Matter of fact, I have a close friend. As a matter of fact, my sponsor in AA lost his son to COVID-19 a week and a half ago, and there's a lot of other people that are dealing with that, and they're dealing with all sorts of other things that are inconvenient, and we're arguing over those things. I understand it has become political, and I don't know how you can make it political. It would be nice if they just didn't try to drop that, but I imagine my side did it as much as anybody else. But I just have this hard feeling that you should not defend a position that makes people more exposed and more liable to, or are likely become ill and die in the end. And I understand that we have to suck it up and we have to maintain the economy. But maybe this, people had a discussion with people. They don't like the idea of having to go out with a mask, and they don't like the idea of being 6 feet apart. They don't like the idea of bars being closed. They don't like the idea of not being able to go to their big concert venues or sporting events. They don't want it. They want to see baseball. They want to see football. They want to see all these things. But these interruptions happen. We're at a time in history. If you think back 500-600 years ago during the plague, people were barely subsisting. The poor were barely surviving. You were lucky to survive through your 30s, and if you were a woman, you're lucky to survive through multiple childbirths, because child mortality was so high in families, and families were pretty much basic work units. They were out to till the field for an overlord, and that's the way it was. It wasn't a pastoral scene where you had just a farmer sitting off on the land and he was doing his farming. There were peasants, a lot of peasants out there, especially in Europe. So when the plague came around, I imagine their normal changed. When whole towns were wiped out, when they lost upwards of 70-80% of the people. And there's an excellent program on Netflix called The Black Plague, and it's a university course brought on by this history professor who goes in detail on what occurred then and how things changed. And these are, I named an episode called A Seminal Event. This is a seminal event. We are living through history. We're always living through history, whether it's small history or big history. This is big history. Let's call it big history. Much like World War I, World War II, the Civil War, things that go on. Eventually, there'll be, if humans survive, they might be other events that rival this. There'll be the switching of the magnetic poles, which is always, I heard, that's a possibility. If the magnetic poles switch, there'll be a transition where there'd be a lot of radiation getting through, because the magnetic field of the Earth protects us from a lot of harmful radiation from space. There still is global warming, and you notice down here how hot it is and stuff like that. We may mitigate a bit of it, having less cruise ships and airplane travel going on. The things that are going to change right now are going to things that will never go back to it. People were going to be more considerate of that if they realize if there's a flu season. If we're going through a regular flu season, and we've had this discussion before, but not much in depth, so let's do a little thought experiment right here. If in a regular flu season, a couple 100,000 people around the world die, but that's without any mitigation steps, what if we can just, would it be nice just to get rid of that by either doing whatever we can? How important is it that we have to be in constant contact with other people other than the people we know and love, meaning know and love our family unit, and there's other people we're affectionate with. Yes, it's important to be touched and things like that, but it's also important to be healthy. But if through a mitigation process, just as wearing masks or social distancing, what if we could save a couple 100,000 people? Wouldn't that be a worthy thing to do? And I know you may not like it, but it may be the thing. Because remember, at one time in human history, before it was written, there was no shoes, there were no pants, there were no shirts. We didn't put on clothes. The early proto-humans, they started taking cloth and probably started covering up. It wasn't out of embarrassment, because they probably realized, hey, you know what? I'm going to cover up my areas I don't want to get hurt. I may need them. So they started covering up the private parts and things like that. And, in the warmer climes, they didn't cover, their tops. So what? They would just run around like that, and they wore it. They started preparing clothes as they started migrating to warmer, colder climes. And clothing became the norm. And I'm sure there were people, before they migrated, they were used to not wearing lots of clothes. The weather was always temperate, get a little chilly at night, stuff like that. And so they just realized, well, it's much nicer to have some clothing when it gets cool. And they started wearing it, and they just kept the clothes on. And then, when we started building communities and started merchant economy, and people had stores, and people said, well, listen, I understand you're not, when hygiene started coming about. You remember, hygiene was not a thing. At one time, it was rare. It was a rarity in human existence to regularly clean your whole body. It was only the last couple hundred years. And, there was, for whole seasons, that people would not immerse their body. It was considered unhealthy to immerse your body in water. And so if you spoke to someone, you took someone from the 21st century and brought them back to the 1600s, the smell would be pungent for the person from the 21st century, and the person from the 16th century would just say, where do you get the fucking clothes on? Look at it. Well, and stuff like that. They may see you're clean shaven and things like that, but they won't notice. They wouldn't smell you as being clean. They would just look a little different. You would notice that they were filthy, even the cleanest person. But they all were that way, and they didn't talk about that. It's just like, I'm sure you would have noticed. They didn't brush their teeth. Most people didn't brush their teeth, so if you spoke to them in a closer manner, the person from the 21st century would discover a wave of halitosis coming at them. So these normal things, I think what we're having a problem with is the suddenness that it happened. The suddenness that we have gone from not worrying how close we are, whether shaking hand, touching people we don't know, having casual encounters with them, which I wanted to talk about a bit in the age of COVID, that, dating and things like that. I want to eventually get to that. But cell phones, that we were gradually, everything, cell phones, telephones, communication. When the United States was first populated by people outside of Native Americans, let's say European Americans arrived, when, let's say, someone came here and emigrated, it would take months and months to get a message back there. And then that's assuming that people knew how to read, because illiteracy was common. Not, there was no mandatory elementary education and things like that. Most people, so letter writing, or you have to get perhaps someone to send a letter, get someone to write a letter, send it to some person, take months to get it to them, and then they'd have to get someone to read it to them. And that was in the 1600s, 1700s, and then even up to 1800s. And nowadays, I guess it was the late 1800s, we have 1876, we got the telephone. And then within the early part of the 20th century, everyone started getting a telephone in their house. They had a transatlantic cable. I guess it was sometime in the early 20th century. They laid that cable so people can make phone calls from overseas. I know they had it available during World War II. So I'm pretty sure they did. I have to double check that. But once that became ubiquitous, people were used to communicating all the time. Now, not in poorer countries. In till this day, a lot of people don't have it, and they're going to be. I mean, we right now it was the Western model. If you think of the normal things and look at normal, having cables, and I mentioned that about the iguana putting everything out, and so you have one. Let's say you have one iguana run across the wire and knocks out for the whole blocks. Right now, we're getting people ideas about local self-sufficient power, cell towers, and things like that. Now, you need power to run. I guess you need power to run a cell tower, but if with solar and wind power and things like that in the third world, which is probably where the biggest growth is going to be from now on, you're going to have people getting things and getting where the whole world has access to it. We were thinking about cell phones. Just think of it, cell phones. Until 2000, most people did not have cell phones. Some people had them, some people didn't. They said, I don't really need it when I leave the house. And then when other people had cell phones, they started getting it. And same thing as cable. Home box office started in the 70s. HBO. And people say, what do you mean? Television comes over the air in waves. We got an antenna on the roof of our house, and it comes in. Now, you have cable, you have satellite, and you have streaming. And streaming is pretty much cable. You have the internet. So, try to tell someone, there'll be some kids out there and saying, yes, you're going to have to give a history. This is how people used to receive their information. You used to get it from terrestrial radio, which is ground wave radio, or AM, FM. And then now we have satellite, we have internet. Very few people, young people nowadays listen to the radio. They listen to the internet. They listen to music apps and things like that. That's the normal now. The normal 30 years ago, radio. Now there's a new normal. So forget about normal. It's never going to go back to the way it was. We could go back, way back, if things got really bad. But that means a fallback, destruction of societies, things like that. But things are always going to change. But because of this thing here, COVID-19, things are changing quickly about certain ways we interact with each other. It's not changing everything. It doesn't change the way you think. It doesn't change the way, it could be the way you pray, because, right now you shouldn't be going in certain places, especially in Florida. You shouldn't be going to these churches with hundreds of people praying. There's no reason why you can't pray outside of church. And remember, if you're a follower of the Christ, then whenever 2 or 3 gather in my name, I'll be there, right? So it doesn't really matter if you got 800 people there. No one ever said, there's nothing in the book says gather 800 people under a top and then collect as much money as you can. No, that's a new thing. I'm sure there's people in the beginning of the Christianity who said, well, what's this thing with getting all these people, and why are you wearing a special hat, and why do you have that stick that's all curly and stuff like that? I'm talking about bishops and cardinals and stuff like that. They started adding those things. That's not something that just appeared or divine inspiration. That's someone says, well, I'm going to wear golden cloths, golden embroidered cloths to celebrate the minimalist Jesus, who was a minimalist. He wore shrouds and sandals. He never put a hat on. He never had a hat on. He may have had a yarmulke, if they had yarmulkes, and for him, the Pharisees started doing that too. So, go and figure it out. Normal. Is any of it really normal? No. Normal is the way we handle change. When you accept it and don't get upset about it, it's not that big a deal. I began dating in the late 70s. would say, I guess 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Yep, late 17 years old in 1980. And 79, 78. Right at the beginning, and they didn't know, right at the inception of the AIDS epidemic. And I guess it wasn't until the mid-80s that people started, late 80s, they started seeing this thing going on. And people, they did all sorts of things. The condom's been around. I guess people were trying to, they found evidence of animal skins being used, animal intestines or something like that, as a prophylactic back in Egypt. And as time went on for years, the safe sex, the idea that you could get, it was until the 1900s they started realizing sexual transmitted disease. They started seeing a correlation between people that weren't too picky about who their partners were and how frequently they had it, and how that they noticed that there were certain people, and there was nothing you could do about it. There's nothing to do. I mean, there were things you could do about it. There was celibacy, but there was no protecting yourselves. And then I guess the 20th century, when the prophylactic came about, and they started issuing them to armies because they knew when soldiers went out, they were going to be having sex, and they were obviously the raping and pillaging kind of guys weren't going to stop and put on a condom, so they may have ended up doing that or infecting other people and things like that. But that wasn't normal either. Prophylactics weren't normal in the 20th century. It became normal. And it became even more normal during the AIDS epidemic. Because even though you could do the math and you knew in the 80s, I remember this in the head, that you said, there's mainly gay people get it, but there are straight people that are getting sick and getting that. But it was predominantly gay because of the type of sex we're having, not because gay people were being damned by God or a higher power. They're just, I guess it was the transfer of fluids and stuff, the way the HIV virus was transmitted. That was more transmitted through certain habits of doing that type of sex. But they knew that if you had a prophylactic, if you had a condom, that you would greatly reduce that. And you track, and if you were infected, you should inform your partner. You should, give informed consent. If someone has this, they should be careful of doing that. And if that happened, there would be less propagation of it. If that happened, we'd be less chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, all those STDs. If people practice safer sex, and then you wouldn't have to worry about it. And if obviously you should, people were using condoms to not get pregnant either, because again, the pill came about in the 60s, I guess, or maybe the late 50s or the 60s, but that did not stop you from getting STDs. But that became normal. It made sense if you wanted to have multiple partners and you didn't know them that well, you didn't know the testing results, or if you even were tested, you could greatly reduce that by wearing a condom. I don't know anybody out there that says, so think of it, there's a great analogy. Think about this. When you go to if you worry about getting syphilis, and let's say you had 100 people and another 100 people, and you get your choice, and you get to intermingle and stuff like that, but there's going to be a couple of them are going to have gonorrhea, chlamydia, syphilis, but you don't know who they're going to be. But you do know that if you wore a condom, you had to really greatly reduce the chance of ever getting any of that, or herpes. Let's say I forgot about herpes. If you were careful, you could mitigate it. And would you mitigate it, or would you not? And would you decide, well, I'm not going to worry about it. I really don't care. I'm going to go bareback. It's called bareback, not using it. I will just try my luck. And then would you tell the next partner you're with, I don't really do any safe sex. I just do whatever I want. And see how that works out. It doesn't work out. I'll tell you that beforehand. You can argue all you want. I don't care. And there's some people saying, I don't. I'm very I scrutinize the people. Well, who's this? I mean, just think about the contacts they had. I only go out with certain classy people. Well, who do you know who they were with and who that they were with? So that's even more so. So when it comes to the COVID-19, right now they're playing with numbers and stuff like that, whether they're going to just have, if it's 1 in 100, 2 in 100, 1 in 200, whatever. And whether getting infected and having it protects you from being stricken with it in the future, which there is now evidence that you can have it, and within 2 to 3 months, virtually all the antibodies are gone. So, who knows? They may have to figure out, people say, well, there's not going to be any way how they're going to create a vaccine if it doesn't stay in the body, if the antibodies don't stay there. Because that's how polio vaccine works. They inoculate you with that vaccine, and it prevents you from contracting polio. And so if you don't have the antibodies to fight it, and you don't build up your T cells, and it doesn't fight the virus, then it's just a waste of time. Or maybe they'll just have to be a little more inventive and be able to create a vaccine that's close enough to COVID-19, but also being able to linger in your system for years. There's the trick. I don't know if it can be done. I'm postulating, much like our president postulated about the idea of taking a disinfectant and putting it inside someone's lungs to clean it out. But I didn't postulate that. I'm suggesting that maybe if they do create a vaccine, they create one close enough that's similar, that would stimulate the system to be able to either fight it, use our T cells against it to fight it, or something like that. But it's not to harm the patient like cleaning out their lungs with disinfectant, which we all know that's kind of silly. And some people say he's not a doctor. Well, Jesus Christ, I hope he's not a doctor. He's more like a medieval doctor, if you think about it. There was a character, Steve Martin played a character on Saturday Night Live back in the 70s and early 80s, I think it was, called something, the medieval barber. And a medieval barber was a doctor. So here we go. I'm talking about dating now. I'm going to move on to dating because I'm tired of this. Now, in the old days, now when I was dating, and you heard that was in the 70s, so I was really reluctant dater. I would just take anybody that would have me in the beginning. I think that's what happens with most people. That you are anybody that's going to stomach me, I'll be happy to go out with, and things like that. Or you have a certain level of, well, this is the kind of person I won't go beyond this line. You have certain characteristics you like, and it could be weight, it could be height, it could be all sorts of things. You have a type, but I was just like any neophyte when it came to dating world. I didn't know necessarily that you'd want to, when you met someone, you want to get someone who likes the same things you like, that likes the same movie, has the same type of ideas on what a relationship was, and things like that. Nope. When I was a teenager, my idea was, is she cute, and does she want to go? Would she go out with me? That was my criteria in the beginning. Two things: was she cute, and would she go out with me? And then as I got older, I started adding more criteria to it. And there were things like the nice thing about it, and I always said this: when you have if you're the type of person that you only date redheads, white redheads, who are Roman Catholic, that's your set. You're dragging your set down to small, like a small group of people. That's who you get to choose from. Now me, I was always attracted to the attractive. I was always attracted to the attractive, let's say. But let's say when I was in my 20s, it was from 20 to 30. Black, white, Asian, Latin. Here we go. I had a big set. And women, obviously, women. I mean, obviously, it's not obviously. Well, some people are, you disagree, bisexual and things like that. They may be attracted to that. But I would doubt that you have a wider, if you would sleep with all these people, like if you're bisexual or trisexual or all these things, that you have more to choose from. I don't think so, because they also, if you're open, you're telling that other person that you do. So you're small. You're only open to people that want to date people that do all those things. And not that I'd have a problem with a woman that slept with women and men. No problem really with that. But there's some people that might have that problem. So in that dating world, that's what happened as I got older, and then eventually I got married when I was 37. I was married for a couple of years, and I got out there again, and then I was in my 40s. I definitely was. I mean, I'm down in the smaller pond. I was in my 40s. I moved down here, single, and I had the experience. I was in 44, so I was happy with the 30 to 50. That is a big range. And the same thing went white, Asian, black, Latin. That doesn't matter. I liked attractive, and I liked pleasant, and I liked fun, and I did fine. Well, COVID-19. There's all these online apps now. There's you're not going out. You don't. I think the direction was going that way anyway. People weren't comfortable meeting outside prior to COVID-19, right? There was Tinder. There was I didn't try anything. Something J-Date, Christian Mingle, all these things. We spoke about it on the show, and people said, "Well, instead of trying to find out someone out there and talking to them, I'm going to go and I want people to categorize themselves. Like I'm a farmer. Oh, God, farmer.com. Whatever. It's a woman who just wants to date a farmer. I want to date someone who does this, has limited social interactions. And, okay, that's farmer.com. That's for you. You could find, the internet certainly helped that. And I said that before, that you can have a very rare person. There are people out there that like to dress up like stuffed animals, and they like to have sex as stuffed animals. That's there. And the internet came up and said, listen, I can fix that problem. If you want to have sex with someone dressed like a teddy bear, I can create a forum for you to meet that person. And there was tons of people out there for that. And they thought it was good. And then you had other things come out, all different groups you want. But then you have COVID-19 come up. Now, you were supposed to get to meet these people and then go out on dates with them. Then you go on a date, you can find out, when you go on these internet things, you always want to think about this. How do you answer a question when you use one of those online questionnaires or any questionnaire someone gives you? Do you give the best answer that you can give to an online dating app to attract more people, or do you give the honest answer? And the honest answer does not always conflict with it, because if you're not a morning person, if you wake up in the morning and you're miserable and you're pissy and you're an asshole, what are you going to do? You're going to you're going to say, listen, I wake up, I'm a real asshole. Sometimes I get kind of violent. I throw shit and do this stuff. You're not going to put that down. You're just going to put, I'm a night person. You know? Are you going to put down that, oh, I have a tendency to black out drunk? No one puts that on their online thing. They never put that. Oh, I have a history of beating my partner. Nope, they're not going to put that there either. They're not going to put, unless they're on a kinky site, they're not going to put all the weird stuff they do. They're not going to put, I have a problem with fidelity. Meaning, unless they're on a site, once again, that's a caveat. The caveat is unless they're on a site that says, free love or something like that to other people. They're always going to, so what I'm suggesting is eHarmony. They're always going to present, when people answer questions, they answer questions in lieu of the hopeful best selves. Meaning, I'll ask the question, are you intelligent? Yes, I'm intelligent. Are you thoughtful? Yes, I'm thoughtful. Even, who would say they're not thoughtful? I'm careless. I mainly, no one ever puts in there. I've forgotten many of my ex's birthdays and her anniversaries. And yes, Valentine's Day, I never did anything special. Are you romantic? No, I'm not romantic. I just want to have sex and go to sleep. Or I want them to service me. Yeah, they may put that on there. That may be, that could be a thing. That could be a thing where you find the right person. I just want to it could be a man or woman. I just want to be able to take care of my partner. I don't really care if they take care of me. I'll take care of myself. That possibly could be a thing. But people are when they're answering these questions, they're answering their best selves. They try to put these questions, try to tilt these questions to make them. They do them with psychological tests, or I mentioned the psychopath test. It may be 250 questions. So you give questions that kind of throw light on whether they're being truthful or not. And that's the best questionnaires are that way, where you say, well, the person says I'm really thoughtful, and then down in the end they'll ask another question that just kind of negates the idea that they're thoughtful, and they'll just say, hey, this person's kind of pulling our leg right here. So I kind of went off on a tangent there, but I do remember when people are answering these questions and they're characterizing themselves in the best. Where when we went out and we saw them and we were at a nightclub, you get to see if the asshole gets belligerent with the bartender or with the guy that bumps into him. You can tell if he's violent. What's his friends like? How he interacts with other women? How he interacts with the people serving him? Is he polite? Is he genteel? Does he eat with his mouth open? Does he drink strawberry daiquiris, or is he drinking bourbon? Does he have a tendency to drink too much? Did he go to the bathroom a lot? Is he sniffing a lot when he comes out of the bathroom? May have other problems. Who knows? But that's what you got to deal with. That's what I always had a problem with. And I always say that when they show these stats for people getting together, it's just like the first year in a relationship. People don't really get themselves known. And then they change too. So they may try to be their best every time you're in a new relationship. You try to do your best. You don't have to be like you did with the last person. You could be different. And I'm a big believer that you could go, every day's a new day. Every day's a new day for change. But a lot of times people don't change. So with COVID-19, here we go. Tons more people joining up. They're not seeing themselves out. But one different thing, before they go on a date, they got to talk more. They got to talk a lot more. A lot of people want to talk more before they do it. They're having these interactions. They're learning more about themselves. They hear stories. Some people let their guards down. When they let their guards down, you know how they are. So, and you can find, there's little tells with people, aren't there? It's people let's say you're in you're in Miami, right? And you're single. And you're 25 years old. Good looking guy. You're looking for a beautiful girl. And you found one. And then you notice the girl say, well, listen, you're being responsible. Now, which probably is a rarity in Miami for certain people because they're very hedonistic down here, very about looks and things like that. And they don't like the mask. They don't like the mask in Miami. They hate it. And the girl might say, well, listen, I don't like wearing a mask because they don't want to say, listen, I realize my best feature is my face and makeup and the way I take care of myself. And if I go out, you don't get to see it, and I don't get treated different. I get treated differently without. When I'm not wearing a mask and you get to see my face and stuff like that, I'm treated better. Then you learn something about that self. You learn that person, here they are. If they're saying that right now, you can see, well, we're in a health crisis. They could say, they can use a little thing to say, well, I don't believe it's as serious as they believe. And you believe, first, they don't believe in science. They don't believe in the reports. And that, so you could tell that thing. Now, it's hard for a guy to turn down an attractive, let's call it what it is, piece of tail, over something as minute as policies, politics, and worldviews. But after a year or two, you can become disgusted with almost anything. And that's what happens eventually in a relationship. And talking will let you know about that. You could end up getting a serious relationship. You start going around and stuff like that. You enjoy the sex and all this stuff and companionship. And you start overlooking things about a person. They suddenly, you start recognizing things as you're going out because you never had to talk beforehand. You never had to talk that, oh, well, they're really into money and they really want me to buy them stuff. If you're watching 90 Day Fiance, is it 90 Day Fiance? I think it's 90 Day Fiance. Every so often, people, you see the person right in the beginning talk about money and they get really sad because you're not buying them things. Well, la-di-da. Who the fuck didn't see that coming? I mean, most of these people are in countries where they're having a tough time of, or that's the way they're making money. Their way of making money be maybe engaging in relationships with these people and then trying to get as much money out of them. That's great. Or they may just want to get out of town, get out of Dodge. But either way, they in 90 Day Fiance, they get a lot of time talking back before they know about it. The person in the United States where they're doing it is desperate. I would love to see the person in the United States is desperate, so they'll take almost anything. They probably didn't do. You have to go to another country to find somebody. They'll probably take almost anything, and they usually put up with a lot. And it's sad because we're a country of almost 350 million people, right? You can't find whatever type you want, whatever type, Asian, Chinese, Eastern European. We got it here, and most of them speak the same language. You don't have to go and jump through hoops to get all that stuff. If they're here, if they're a foreigner and they're here already, there you go. But to go overseas and spend all that coin out there, it's amazing. It's desperate. But I imagine in the next couple of years, if we don't change our tune here, there's going to be Americans wanting to go. There should be 90 Day Fiance Canada edition, maybe United Kingdom, France, where they're interviewing Americans. Hopefully we can get our shit together. So for now, I'm going to wrap up this episode. I'd like to thank all you for listening. I know it's been a while. I was kind of depressed over the rescheduling of my procedure, but I realize most of you are going through much worse. Or maybe less. But either way, it's selfish of me to dwell on that, because it's my job to be content. And that's my job for my family, to be content, be an earner, be a good nurturer, And on the podcast, I just want to tell you about how things are down here in the Keys. And right now, it's a little crowded. We got a lot of people that are leaving the almost quarantine conditions of Miami to come down to Keys, which aren't. And I have a word for the people that are running Monroe County. They're speculating that things will get better eventually before it gets too bad. Right now, originally before we opened up the Keys, it was about 129 people, positive cases, which is not a lot for 75,000 people. Not too much at all. But now I think we're at 600 or 700, and we are coming up on our lobster mini season, and that we get a lot of people down here for that. And we are a tourist economy, and I understand, I really do understand that there's people that don't. Hey, I'm a bartender. There are people who do not make money when there's no tourists down here. And when the people that depend on tourist dollars don't make money, then it kind of builds up on itself, because the people that make money down here on tourists spend their money down here. So you lose the first tier being the people that work in the tourist economy. And then you got the people that service the tourist economy, meaning like the people that provide food service, cleaning the hoods of the cooking places, delivering beer, cleaning the beer lines, the sanitation crews that come in, which is probably a pretty big deal now, but cleaning places. The only thing that's really booming when there's no tourists down here is medical. And we do have a lot of retirees down here. We have people that live, that want to see the Keys closed down to stop the influx of people. But they were coming in anyway. They were coming in with fake resident permits on their windshields. People with Airbnb owners and things like the kind of sort that do long-term were bringing people in. And my guess would be that it's just like offenders everywhere. When I say offenders, I'm not saying everyone is an offender. I'm just saying some people. People don't just break the law a little. Normally when you get someone that breaks laws or rules or standards, they do it a lot. They do it a lot. They just don't do a little bit. So the people that ignore quarantines and things like that, they're not doing anything, and they're more likely to be infected because they don't practice any procedures. They have some kind of agenda or problem or thing like that, and they're just actively they're not trying to get sick. And there have been stories of people in parties and stuff. They're not trying to get sick. They just don't believe in it. They don't want to believe in it. And it doesn't fit into their worldview right now. It sucks. It sucks for them. They don't want their worldview. Their worldview is, I want to go to a party. I want to get drunk. I want to go out. I want to dance. I want to do this. I want to go to a sandbar. I want. And anything that curtails that is bullshit. So they go and do it with other people of like mind who are more like them and more likely to be infected because they don't practice any of it. They hug, they kiss, blah, blah, blah. Great. They feel better for a little while, and then eventually after a while, you see some of these people do change when a loved one gets sick and they're suffering. And they go, oh, wow. But there's still, was it 2 days ago, I had someone ask me, they said it again, I really don't know anybody who's been sick. And I go, why would you say that not knowing if anybody around you knows anybody that's sick? Why would you want to be on the receiving end of that bad mojo? Wouldn't it just, like if you said it, well, my grandma's still healthy. I don't have any grandparents anymore. My last two grandparents just died from COVID-19. Oh, like, what would you do? You really want to be on the receiving end of that, or do you not fucking care? Just keep your mouth shut. You know, the best thing to do is, I don't believe in it. I'm wearing the mask now because it's mandated. Okay? I believe, yeah. And you may believe that the rest of the people are sheep, right? But, you know, you can ignore all the evidence. They did this, you know, it happened a long time. It took forever to get Lister in the 1800s when he said there was bacteria and germs and you needed to sanitize and, you know, all your, you know, your operating areas and wear a mask and wash your hands and things like that. There were doctors said that's bullshit. It's interfering with my way I do things. I don't have time to do that. You know what they have time now do? They have time to have sanitized, antiseptic, whatever you would call for your, you know, your tools for an operating room. It's clean now. I mean, now obviously they're not. It doesn't bring it down to zero. It just reduces the likelihood. That's all they're doing, reducing the likelihood. Yes, the germs are very tiny. They can go and slip into a lot of different places. But what you're doing is reducing droplets, concentrated amounts of virus getting out. You know, two people who have a mask have a less chance than one person wearing a mask. I know it's not 100% perfect, but it's working in other countries. That's the reason why there's 550 newly infected in all of Germany, 280 in Japan, and we're at 60, 70,000. You know, that's 300 times almost, 200 times, 100 times. I mean, how likely is it? I mean, it's so bad now that we're probably running out of tests, and that it's taking 7 days and longer to get results because there's so many people being tested, because there's so many people infected. And when someone gets infected and they know we're in contact with other people, they got to test more people. That's the way it is. There's going to be tons more testing in the United States. But if we just take our time, think this thing through, the new normal doesn't have to be bad. It doesn't have to be bad. It could spur on, there could be new things that come up. Who knows? Why be depressed about it? Why get angry about it? Why are you yelling at old ladies when they're telling you to put on a mask when you're in a supermarket? Just put the fucking mask on. You're not changing your way you view the world. Yes, you may not think Donald Trump is not a traitor, and he's a Christian, and he's a good man. He's not a womanizer. He's not a sexual predator. Yes, you can believe all those things and still wear a mask. You can believe all those things and still wear a mask. Just be a decent person. Think about other people. Be considerate. It doesn't make you a pussy. A gentleman is not a pussy. When you think about other people, you know, when you're acting like a fucking barbarian when you're out there not giving a shit about people. That's what you're doing. So do it, and if you like the program, please share it with your friends. Give us a like on Facebook or Twitter. If you like to leave a rating, that'd be good too. I mean, a good review. But and hopefully, you know, don't send the podcast to friends that don't believe in this stuff. They're not going to like it. I understand that, and I don't need to be liked by those people. Okay, they have their own issues, and don't be upset for them, because, like I said, history will be the best judge of what we're doing now. And I have no idea what some people are doing right now. I don't know why they're doing it. I understand they think that they're doing the best for the economy, but in the end, they're just dragging it out. They're dragging it out. So let's get fixed this time. Let's be careful out there, everyone. I care. I care whether you're sick or not. I don't care if you agree with me or not. I don't want you to get sick. I don't want you to get ill. I don't want you to die. I don't want people around you to do that. Do your best. That's all can be expected. And thank you for listening. This is Jim the Keys bartender. Come to you, and maybe I'll come to you tomorrow. Bye.